What's up guys, my name is Ace, and it's that time of the year where we're transitioning into the new Call of Duty, and we're going to be giving a final rating on the current Call of Duty, which is Black Ops 3. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so just wanted to start this off by saying this is going to be a biased final review. These are my thoughts, my opinions on the game, so feel free to disagree, that's totally fine. Just want to let you know that it's not a completely objective look at this game. It's my thoughts based on my year of playtime in Black Ops 3. Also, in the previous years, I followed a very strict format. I'm still going to be somewhat following that format, but just not nearly as strict. I used to give like each section a rating out of 10, and I'm not going to be doing that this time around because things have changed so much with the games that it just doesn't really work anymore to follow that format really strictly. But I still will be giving my rating out of 10 at the end of the video. So let's start it off with the first category that I usually go over, and that is gun balance. The gun balance in this game I find to be very, very solid for a COD game. Of course, there's always going to be top tier and lower tier weapons. That's going to happen no matter what. But I feel like in this game, there's a lot of really good variety of guns. Every single gun is viable in this game, and every gun has its own unique feel. We've seen in the past with some Call of Duties, either the guns are like too similar to the point where they don't have their own like personality or character, and it doesn't really matter which gun you're using, it feels like, or they're so far apart that there's no point in even using a certain set of guns because they're just completely useless compared to the top tier guns. In Black Ops 3, I feel like that gap between the top tier and the lower tier guns wasn't really that extreme, and therefore I really liked the gun balance on average in this game. A few of the guns that get complained about the most, like the Brecci or the VMP, I really don't personally have too much of an issue with. Like, yes, the VMP is a top tier SMG, and yes, the Brecci can be annoying to die to, but I feel like a lot of people forget that the Brecci is a shotgun and it should be dominating up close, and that it is very counterable by a slight change in playstyle. Would I have been okay with a slight nerf to the Brecci? Sure, I would have been fine with that. But overall, it wasn't something that was completely game-breaking in my opinion, like some people seem to think. As for sniper rifles, I know this is a bit of a controversial topic, but in my opinion, I really like what they did with the snipers in Black Ops 3. They made it so it takes a lot of skill to get good with, but once you are good with it, they're very viable and you can get a lot of satisfying kills with them. I don't feel like sniper rifles should be something that anybody can just pick up and suddenly be successful with. I like the fact that you have to put the time in and practice to get good with them, and then once you do, you get those rewarding one-shot kills at any range on the map. And I am saying this from both ends of it. I really enjoy sniping sometimes in this game. It's really satisfying to get those kills. And at the same time, on the other end of that, if I'm being sniped consistently by somebody, my first thought isn't, oh my god, quickscoping is so annoying. It's more so, wow, props to you, you put in the time, you practice that, you just beat me fair and square, you just showed me who's boss. Good job. And that's how I feel it should be with sniper rifles, but that's just my opinion. Now, so far everything I've talked about with guns is the base guns in the game. Now I want to talk a little bit about the supply drop weapons. I am not a fan of how they did supply drop weapons in this game, or DLC weapons, whatever you want to call them. I really don't like that the only way that you could get those guns is through luck. Even if you're a season pass holder, even if you've paid the most amount of money that you can pay for, like the base game as well as the season pass and everything like that, you still aren't guaranteed all of this content in the game, and I find that to be ridiculous. This is actually my biggest complaint with the game as I was coming up with this review. My number one issue with this game is the way they handle DLC weapons in supply drops. I will say they did a pretty good job overall of keeping those supply drop weapons not too powerful. Most of these weapons were based off of one of the base guns in the game, and they changed up a few stats, they changed up the animations and stuff, and generally they actually made it slightly weaker than the base gun that they based it off of. But there were other ones that had completely unique characteristics like the NX Shadowclaw, and I was very disappointed to see those only in supply drops. Because that's completely unique content that, for a lot of people, they will never have access to, and to me that's just unacceptable. So my number one issue with this game is the fact that they locked in-game playable content behind supply drops, even for those people that had spent the money on the best edition of the game with the season pass and everything along those lines. So that's it for guns and gun balance and everything like that. Let's move on to perk balance, since that's one of the categories I usually cover. I would say in Black Ops 3, they have great perk balance on average. One thing I would like to mention is I feel like Fast Hands is a little bit of a crutch perk. Like, it's just something that helps so often in this game that if you don't have it, you feel like you're at a disadvantage, or it really slows down your playstyle. Or at least for me, I feel like it really causes me to play a lot slower. And I feel like it's something that shouldn't be as a perk. And I like how Infinite Warfare looks like they're going to be handling it this year, where there is no crutch sprint out type perk. As for a couple of the perks that a lot of people like to complain about, Sixth Sense and Tracker, yes, I feel like they cater to the more casual player, and yes, they give out free kills sometimes, but I really don't feel like it's as bad as a lot of people made them out to be. First off, they are easily countered by Hardwired, and second, for most of the people that are using those perks, Sixth Sense and Tracker, it might sound a little bit cocky to say, but I feel like I'm going to beat those people most of the time anyways, because generally the people that are using those perks are the more casual players, and they aren't too confident on their map knowledge or their awareness of what's going on around them, and I am very confident in that kind of stuff. So, sure, give them that perk. I still know where they are generally, and I'm still going to win the gunfight against them generally. So, for me, Tracker and Sixth Sense, while I would prefer it if they weren't in the game, they weren't really an issue for me throughout the game's life cycle. Moving on to the score streak balance, again, I feel like Black Ops 3 did a pretty good job with score streak balance. Of course, there's a few things that I would change. I feel like they overbuffed the wraps a little bit. Like in the current state towards the end of its life cycle, I feel like wraps are just a little bit too game-changing and a little bit too powerful, especially as like a mid to high range streak. If anything, I would say the wraps are the best streak in the game, and should be the highest streak in the game in its current state, because the Mothership just doesn't really feel worth it. It's a huge score streak, and it isn't really consistent at getting tons of kills, whereas something like Wraps, those are quite consistent at getting a lot of kills pretty much every time you call them in. Another thing that I would have liked to see improved a little bit would be the GI unit. Again, it's a super high streak, and I just feel like it's inconsistent. I'm not going to say it's bad, because sometimes it does go off and get you a lot of kills, but it seemed like those situations were pretty rare, and for it being such a high streak, I feel like it should just be a little bit more consistent. Aside from that, I feel like everything was balanced quite well as far as the cost versus reward of the score streaks. And I also found a lot of them to be pretty fun to use, like the dart for instance, even though I didn't use it too often because I don't like being taken out of the fight for too long. It's a fun streak to use. I like flying that thing around and trying to fly it through like buildings and stuff, and going through doorways and windows and everything like that, and picking off enemies while you're doing that. I find that to be really enjoyable, and the same thing goes for a lot of the other streaks. So overall, I really like how they handled score streaks in Black Ops 3. Moving on to map design, this is where things start to get very subjective, I would say. For me, I love Treyarch map design. I'm a big fan of it. I realize it's not for everybody. Some people don't like the fact that it's like all 3-lane and there's a lot of pieces of cover to use and stuff like that, and everything's like perfectly laid out and perfectly planned. A lot of people prefer the more open style COD maps that Infinity Ward tends to have. But for me, I like how they handled it in Black Ops 3. I feel like for the most part, they kept the maps competitive, yet varied at the same time, and also there was a tendency for the maps to have really good flow to them. One of the big issues that a lot of people tend to have with Treyarch maps is they get too boring and stale because they're all the same, and while they do follow the same general layout for the most part, I feel like they varied that up enough in this game. Like for instance, you have a very similar layout from Redwood to Stronghold, like if you were to just draw a map of the lanes, yet those maps play completely differently. I don't feel like these maps are just cookie cutter. Now, out of the base maps in the game, I would say there are two that really stand out that I wasn't really a fan of, and that is Havoc and Metro. But really, they rarely get voted for, and I would say I play them very rarely, to the point where when they do pop up and I do play them, it's kind of a breath of fresh air, and I don't mind playing them, even though I'm not a huge fan of them, just because it's something I hadn't played in a while. So for the base maps, I am quite happy with the map design in Black Ops 3. As for Nuketown, that can go die in my opinion. I feel like Nuketown shouldn't be in the regular playlists. It should just stay in Chaos Mosh Pit. If you want that crazy sort of action where there isn't much big picture strategy involved and it's just like gunfight, 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 that's fine. Keep that in its own playlist. It's such a different experience going from Nuketown to a different map that I feel like they don't even belong in the same playlist. That's just my opinion though. I know a lot of people do like Nuketown, and that's fine. I'm just sharing my opinion on it. As for DLC maps, I feel like a lot of the DLC maps in this game are really hit or miss. I loved some of them, and then I absolutely hated other ones. The one map that really stands out that I feel is absolutely the worst map in the game is Rupture. Rupture is that remade map from World at War. I think it was Outskirts from World at War, and it's got the mech suits and stuff in it. I don't feel like that map has any place in this game. And I think it was just a marketing strategy so they could put those mech suits in, and that's really all it came down to. That map, in my opinion, just plays terribly in Black Ops 3. But on the other side of that, I think something like Citadel plays really, really well, or Berserk. That one also plays really well. I like that they brought back like Raid, for instance, too, and Standoff. I love those maps, and I have a great time playing on those maps. But there were just those few DLC maps that I just refused to play. And I'm a pretty laid back guy too. Like, I don't mind playing a map that I'm not a huge fan of, but I refuse to play Rupture because I just feel like it's a waste of my time. Another thing I wanted to point out with maps is I like that they added the water. I was really skeptical at first when I heard there's going to be like swimming and stuff in it, but I feel like they implemented that very, very well. And I will also say that the maps handled the movement system of Black Ops 3 very well also. There were some areas where you could gain some advantages by using a wall run or swimming underwater or something like that, but I feel like it wasn't absolutely required to excel on these maps. And for me, that's a great thing. So, map design for me, overall, very, very solid. Now let's move on to the next category that we usually like to cover, and that is connections or netcode. Now, disclaimer at the beginning of this, like I always say, everybody's connection experience is going to be different in some way. I will say for Black Ops 3, my connections on average have been very good. I've had very few connection related issues or laggy games or anything like that. It was a little bit unstable at first, but it worked itself out really quickly. And then also after DLC 3, there was that title update that seemed to screw everything up for a lot of people. And I was one of those people. I was dealing with connection issues after that title update. But after a week or two, that pretty much disappeared and things went back to normal for me. So for me at least, connections were actually really good in Black Ops 3 on average. Now the final category that we normally talk about is going to be developer support. And in this area, I would say they were great at keeping up with balancing guns all the time. They were always making tweaks to try and get things right where they need to be. And I like that Treyarch does that. I know that some people don't like that because they feel like they can't keep up with what's going on with all the guns and stuff. But I like the fact that they stay on top of things generally and keep things nicely balanced. Also, especially at the beginning of the game, and if we're looking at back to the beta and everything like that, I feel like they made a lot of changes that were requested by the community. People were saying, I don't like this is game breaking, like Black Hats for instance, or Rejack for instance in the beta. For the community, those were huge issues, and they completely redid those and made them more where they should be. So overall, for the balancing type stuff, I feel like they did an excellent job in this game. As for the technical issues, this is stuff that I don't fully understand, so I can't really speak about it too much. But a lot of people would agree, as the DLCs started coming out, it feels like the game got a lot less stable. There were connection interrupted type things going on. There was stuttering, there was frame drops. Stuff like that started to happen after we got a few DLCs. I feel like maybe they just overloaded the game with too much content, but again, I'm not an expert. I don't know what went wrong, but something went wrong there. And they did work to improve it, and like I said with the connections section, the connections got really bad after DLC 3 for me, but then they improved. So they were still trying to stay on top of things, it seemed like, but it still isn't perfect. And there are still issues with the game, like technical issues with the game, that were never really solved. So yes, there are some issues, but generally it seems like the developers were staying on top of most of the things that were going wrong in the game. And I can't really recall any serious game-breaking issues that didn't get addressed promptly by the developers. So those are the categories I normally cover, but there's a few other things that I wanted to talk about with this game, so we're just going to move on to like miscellaneous, basically. And with this one, I just wanted to say I love the fact that they added Safeguard, for instance. I really liked how they did the movement system in this game. I feel like Advanced Warfare's movement system was just too much, and Black Ops 3 is that nice middle ground, where you could play that game 100% boots on the ground, and you could still be successful on most maps. Yes, there's a couple areas where you will need to do a boost jump to get across between the two different lanes, but in reality, if you just kept your feet planted all the time, and you were implementing the fundamentals of good FPS play, like using cover and being ready for gunfights before they happen, you can be very successful in this game. So I like the fact that they added those options of doing wall runs and double jumps and swimming and all that kind of stuff, but it wasn't required to be successful. Also, I will say that my biggest concern going into this game when we started learning information about it was going to be the specialists, and mainly the power weapons of the specialists, not so much the abilities. And it really wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it would be. I thought it would potentially be a game-breaking sort of thing. But in reality, yes, you get the odd annoying death to a gravity spike or a ripper or a purifier or something like that, but it's not something that completely turns me off of the game. It's just like, okay, he got his gravity spike kill on me. That's annoying, but whatever, move on. Back in the fight, whatever. And I'm quite happy to see that. Now, would I prefer if there were no power weapons? Yeah, I probably would prefer if they weren't in the game at all. But having said that, they aren't nearly as big of a deal as I thought they would be. One criticism that I have that I really feel like they need to have in future COD games, and I don't know why they're not adding this because they had it in Modern Warfare 3 and it worked great. Where is our disabled DLC button? When I'm alone or I'm playing with other people that have all of the DLC like I do on PS4, it can be very difficult to find a lobby, especially in the game modes that are less populated. But the moment I get a single person in my party that has none of the DLC, finding games is like instant. It's no problem at all. I can instantly get into a game, and I can play the lesser played game modes like Demolition, for instance. I can play those, but only when I have somebody in my party that doesn't have any DLC. So where is our disabled DLC option, Treyarch? Alright guys, so that's all of the main stuff that really stands out to me in my head at least. There might be some little things that I missed and didn't touch on, but overall, those are the things that remind me of Black Ops 3. When I think hard about Black Ops 3, those are the good things, those are the bad things, and overall, I would say that Black Ops 3 was one of the most, if not the most enjoyable years of Call of Duty that I have had. And that's saying something. I've been playing since COD 2, I've been playing multiplayer since COD 4, and I've loved every Call of Duty game that's ever come out. But Black Ops 3, I would say, is one of my favorite experiences. The core gameplay is just excellent. The gun balance, the perk balance, the map design, the score streaks, all of those things in my mind are next to perfect. Like I said though, the one major issue that I have with this game, and I feel like the one big failure of this game, is the fact that they had non-cosmetic items locked behind supply drops only. Of course, there were some other little issues, but if they didn't have those non-cosmetic items locked behind DLC, I would say this game would be next to perfect for me, at least. So at the end of the day, I'm actually going to be rating Black Ops 3 the highest I've ever rated a Call of Duty, and I've been doing this since Modern Warfare 3, like I said. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I know a lot of you guys might not agree with that. I know there's some people that absolutely hated Black Ops 3, but like I said, this is my opinion, and for me, this game was excellent. And while I am excited to get into Infinite Warfare, I am also a little bit sad to see Black Ops 3 go. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what do you think of Black Ops 3? If you guys want to write out a nice long detailed response, go ahead. If you just want to give it a rating, you can also do that as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you guys next time.